Because you're one of those stories, for me personally, it's miraculous.
It was pretty good. Like, we had our own little blended family, but my mom was definitely like my parent. She knew me better than anyone else. I remember the dress that my mom wore the first time when we went to church. She looked beautiful. Yeah, I got baptized. Like, everything's gonna be so good now.
Yeah.
But I feel like I got humbled really fast. I don't know how much my brother saw. He heard the first gunshot and he ran. He said he heard 10 more shots. Like, my world shattered.
Oh, yeah. How does a 16-year-old process this kind of tragedy?
Well,
Hey there, I'm Mark Rempel, and welcome to One on One. One thing we love to do is hear people's stories, and that's what this particular podcast is all about. We're storytellers from our own lives, and today we've got an amazing story and an amazing human with us. I want you guys to give a shout out to Kaida Castillo. Did I say that right? No, I did. I butchered it again.
it's okay.
Kaida
Del Castillo.
Del Castillo.
Yeah.
And it's an honor to have you on the show. And I'm so excited to hear your story, to watch it and listen to it unfold, because you're one of those stories for me personally that it's miraculous. And if you've ever wanted to see a life and a miracle in a life and how that affects the everyday, I think your conversation will matter. But I got to start with some easy questions because these are questions about storytellers, and I'm a movie guy. I don't know if you see movies or grew up seeing some movies, but I love movies because they tell a story. So I like to ask this question, like, what's your favorite movie of all time, or a movie you really like, you go back and watch?
The only movie that I'll ever really go back and watch is Donnie Darko.
I would have never expected that.
Yeah, I think it has to do a lot with how I grew up. My parents were very into conspiracy theories, and we would watch alien videos together. And
oh my gosh, I love it.
So we would watch Donnie Darko a lot, and we would literally sit there and peel it apart like an onion. We would rewatch every single scene and
wow.
Yeah. So it became one of my favorite movies.
That is a good shocking surprise.
Yeah.
Let's say somebody comes along and they're like, all right, Kaida, we're going to make a movie about you. Your story is so compelling. Who would you want to play your role?
Zoe Deschanel.
Okay. All right. She's a great actress. And I could see that. She's got kind of a light, airy.
She's got the bangs.
She's got the bangs.
She's got the bangs.
She's got the bangs. True. But more than that, I think she's got a sweet personality, and so do you.
Thank you.
Yeah. What I love about what we've been doing is having conversations just about life. And I got to meet you. You were a name around our community that I had heard just because your story is so compelling. And when I got to meet you, I was just, again, blown away by how, again, genuine you are. People may hear about what we say and think, how on earth could I ever get to that place that they're at? You know, maybe somebody would see you today and go, man, Kaida looks so put together. And she's a young adult that's got her act together. You're starting culinary school next week, right? But there's so much more behind the scenes of the journey you've been on. So tell me a little bit about Kaida today. I got to see you last night at CR, which is Celebrate Recovery in our community. And man, you just finished your step study. We are so proud of how far you've come and what God's done in your life. But what are some things that mark Kaida today? Like, who are you and what are you doing?
Well, currently I'm kind of in a in-between period. I graduated last May, and then I started my step study in July, I want to say. So I kind of just wrapped up a bunch of stuff before going to school again. So I'll be starting culinary school, and in the middle I was just working and really trying to focus on church. CR really holds my heart, so I wanted to put a lot into that. Serving there a lot, just trying to go every single week and really work through everything I have going on before starting school again and starting the next chapter. So this is kind of the end of my in between and then the start of like whatever God has next.
Wow. Kind of what is to come. But one thing I admire about you is the consistency you've had in the in-between. Because it's easy to get lost in the in-between, especially for, I think, a younger generation, because there's so many things pulling at you. What would you say is one thing that's helped you remain consistent during this in-between? I mean, honestly, your attendance at CR, showing up on Sunday mornings, being willing to serve. I mean, I think that's rare for a human being, but especially for somebody in your generation, because you have so many other choices. What's helped you remain consistent, do you think? Your alarm clock, you're like getting up.
A lot of the time it's community. I have a lot of people who, I wouldn't say it's like guilt tripping, but they're like, I can't wait to see you on Sunday. And it's like, well, if I don't go, like this person's like not going to have somebody to sit next to or something like that. But a lot of it is like, I want change. Like I need something to change.
Yeah.
And so if I'm not showing up at church and I'm not putting the effort in, then nothing's going to happen. I can't expect change without trying, without doing something. So if I'm complacent, then nothing's going to happen. So that's probably the biggest thing.
That is huge. And I think to wrap your head around it and then do something about it is probably, I think would be what I would say about your life is the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Or the secret spice.
Yeah,
in
the
the
secret
cookie.
spice.
Whatever that might be. But I think for you personally, I just admire that you want change and you've gone after it. Because your story has so many unique parts that it would have been easy for you to have been like, I'm out, or I'm going to explore other options in life because there's no way that God could be in the middle of what I'm experiencing. So again, somebody might look at you, Kaida, and go, man, that girl, I want to be like that. But to be like that, I think you've learned so much on your journey. So let's go back to Kaida and when she was much younger. Okay. Where'd you grow up and what did you experience as a child? What kind of environment was your family like? And what was it growing up? What was it like growing up with your parents?
I was born in Tucson.
Okay.
But I only lived there until I was about 5. My parents got divorced very young, so I actually don't have a memory of them together ever.
Wow.
My first memory, I actually was meeting my stepbrother. So my mom had been dating this guy from Gilbert, and he had brought his son down to Tucson to meet us, and we were playing hide and seek, and that was my first memory.
Wow.
And then shortly after, we moved from Tucson to Gilbert, and my dad moved from Tucson to Phoenix, so we could still like split custody.
Connect there.
Yeah. And my mom and my dad had a very cordial relationship. It was never a lot of fighting or anything like that. They were, I don't want to say friends, but they were friendly. So that was never like really an issue. And my stepdad was great. I loved him. He really took us in. And that's kind of hard because he had one son and I was like a daughter. So he had never had a daughter before. And so I kind of just got thrown into the mix. But him and his parents, they really took us in and they really took care of us. But my mom was a small business owner. So she kind of had a career change around the same time that I was born. So she was in interior design and then she started co-owning a business. Even with my parents being divorced, I didn't really know anybody at the time who had parents that were divorced. And so we ended up moving to Mesa. My dad stayed in Phoenix. And it was pretty good. Like we had our own little blended family. My stepbrother was there from time to time. He was pretty in and out. He's a year older than my brother, so he's 3 years older than me. And really, we got along really well. My brother and I are pretty opposite. So growing up, my brother had a lot of anger issues, and he had a hard time like following the rules. So he was kind of a very outspoken, always getting in trouble kind of kid. And so I became kind of a quiet, follow the rules, goody two-shoes kind of kid.
You were the good girl.
Yes. So it created a lot of problems for me later in life because I ended up hiding a lot or just trying to do everything perfectly so my parents could focus on my brother. But yeah, my mom and my stepdad had a really great relationship. I never once saw them fight. I kind of looked to them as like what love should look like.
Yeah.
And they were kind of like my example of like what I wanted in a relationship. I love my mom. She was like my best friend. And I just have so many great memories with my mom.
Did you have a closer relationship, did you feel like, with her than your dad, or was it pretty even?
Yeah, definitely with my mom. Yeah. And I feel like that's pretty common. Like, I'm a daughter. Like, but my mom was definitely like my parent, if that makes sense. Like, she was like my emergency contact. She was who I would call if I didn't feel good. And she was there for me no matter what. And like, she knew me better than anyone else.
Did God play a part of any of that family dynamic? Did you guys go to church or what?
No. I was raised atheist. So my dad and my mom were ex-Catholics along with my stepdad.
Wow.
So they were, all ex-Catholic, which is kind of like, I don't know if it's crazy, but like just to find that they were all from different walks of life and they all had gone to Catholic church and then realized that it wasn't their thing. But I grew up pretty atheist. I would say my mom was more open. So growing up, she was kind of going through her own, like, what is God? Who is God? Is there a God? So we together kind of dabbled in a bit of Buddhism and then a bit of New Age near the end before I found God. And so we practiced a lot of spirituality together. And there was a lot of crystals in the house.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. To be fully honest, I've casted spells. I've done the whole shebang, manifested, done all of that. So
just sitting across from you again, knowing who you are, knowing your demeanor. I mean, those are things, you have this idea in your head of maybe what that would look like, but hearing it come from you, it sounds like it was very much a normal part of your life. So it wasn't this weird, wacky belief system that you kind of find in a horror movie, but it was just something that it was all you knew.
Yeah. We were kind of just trying to find our purpose, I would say. Like, I guess we were like a little lost, especially because it seems like most of my family has been hurt by the church in some way. And so we just really didn't know where to turn. And that's why we kind of turned in all different directions and kind of like picked into little things.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think when you're hurt, whether church in your background has hurt or misunderstanding, or you haven't utilized it as a guide, it's easy just to kind of stay away from.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings you to where I met you and got to hear a little bit of your story. How did you find a relationship with Jesus? Because I know that's an extremely important part of your life and you're passionate about that relationship. I get to observe that and watching you come in as a high school student in our youth group in Tribe, and then seeing you just like blossom and grow in that. How did that happen?
It's kind of funny, actually. I kind of got to see God's plan kind of unfold once I started going to church all the way back from when I was in middle school. So when I was in 8th grade, I believe, my brother was attending McClintock High School.
Okay.
And my brother, again, was dabbling in some stuff that he shouldn't have been, and he ended up getting expelled. So my path, I was supposed to go to McClintock. And because my brother got expelled, I ended up not. And so my mom and my brother were looking for a new school to go to so that he would start and I would start. And my brother at the time was living full-time with my mom. So they were looking for somewhere in Mesa to go. And they ended up landing at Westwood. It was like a debacle between Mesa High and Westwood, which is funny because they're rivals.
Right.
But yeah. So they ended up choosing Westwood. So then I attended Westwood my freshman through senior year, and my brother went sophomore through senior year.
Okay. What's their mascot there?
Warrior.
So you were a warrior.
I was a warrior, yeah.
Westwood Warrior. Yeah, Kaida.
Yeah. So freshman year was probably the most depressed I've ever been. I was still dabbling in New Age and all this kind of stuff, and I was really lost. And so I would come home and just completely break down for no reason. Like, I wouldn't understand why, and I would just like sob for hours, and it would really freak out my mom because she wasn't really sure what to do. Like, I would just come home and like I was a mess. And so that's when I started therapy. And then my sophomore year, I got my first boyfriend, and I was a little embarrassed because he had a job and I didn't. So I was like trying to find a place to work so that we could kind of share like some of the pay when we would go out and stuff like that. And the problem is I was 15 and everyone was hiring at 16. So everywhere I applied, they denied me. Like, I applied literally everywhere, and they were like, no, you can't work here.
Most 15-year-olds would be like, that's fine with me. I love that you had a passion.
I was determined, yeah. So I ended up deciding to try and work in Tempe Marketplace because that was kind of the middle between my mom and my dad's house. And so I was like looking up like, who will hire you at 15? And they were like, ice cream shops. Ice cream shops will hire you at 15. So there's a Cold Stone in Tempe Marketplace.
Yeah.
And I get all dressed up, and I have my resume and my cover letter.
Nice.
And I go in and I ask for the manager, and I'm like, please hire me. And he goes, all right, come back and you're hired. I was like, that was it. That was it. He was basically like, you're hired.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I started working there during the summer.
Okay.
And there was this girl there named Stephanie. And we got to be really good friends because actually our boyfriends knew each other.
Okay.
So
and now you're making the big money.
Yeah, I'm making the big money.
You're able to pay for your boyfriend's, dinner.
Yes, we start going to the gym together and we hang out all the time. And she's like, you know what? You should come to church with us. And I was like,
I love
church.
That. I love that invitation.
Yeah.
You're like, what?
Yeah. And I was like, man, like, I've never been to church, but I was kind of starting to get curious at this time. Like, I had no one had ever even told me the gospel story at this point.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
See, that blows my mind because we live in a country, where we have, obviously freedom, and we know that God has been a center point for us as a nation throughout our history. But to not know the gospel story, I've ever heard it. And I think it's fascinating that you really hadn't been to church.
Yeah. I've never been to a Christian church. I had been to a Catholic mass a couple of times. I had been for a couple baptisms. I've been for a funeral, stuff like that, but never just like gone to mass.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know the creation story. I knew nothing. Wow. All I knew is that there was a guy named Jesus and he died on a cross. And that was it. I didn't know why. I had no idea.
Wow.
So she's like, well, we go on Wednesdays sometimes for youth. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I honestly didn't want to go. There was no like real urge to go. And the one who actually pushed me to go was my mom.
Really?
She was like, why don't you just try it out once and just see if you like it? And so I went, and that night that I went, it was right before Easter. And so Skylar does this thing like right before Easter where I forget what he calls it. Oh man, I feel so bad.
It's where they have the cross.
Yes.
And basically they take nails and you write something on a sheet of paper that maybe you need to surrender or let go of. And it's just a matter of nailing that to the cross. You know?
So I remember I got there and we got there late and we got there in the middle of worship and I'm like, what is happening? I'm pretty sure Avery's on stage and I'm like, what? Like literally like what is going on? I've never been in a setting like this before. And so I'm just sitting there during the message and Skylar is just like talking about the cross. And I literally had no clue. Like, I didn't know that this is what the cross meant.
Yeah.
I didn't know. And I'm just sobbing. Like, I'm literally sobbing. I'm like, this is my first time here, and I'm crying my eyes out. That's so embarrassing. And it gets to the point where, like, Skylar asked us to nail something on the cross. So I nailed down, like, my suicidal ideation. I'm sobbing. And I just nail it on the cross. And I gave my life to Christ.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
That's the night. What a beautiful night. I mean, what a memory to have that you chose, especially being able to see that cross in front of you.
Yeah.
To see the price that Christ paid. And you're like, all right, then I accept that price and I'm going to accept him into my heart.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, I'm glad you went to youth group that night.
I know, right?
So did everything like change overnight, or like what?
Oh, no.
What did it feel like?
It felt like I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I remember, like, getting the Bible and, like, opening it up, and I'm like, I don't know what this means, but I want to know. And so that kind of really started, like, my journey.
Yeah.
Is I was still kind of scared to go, so I would only really go on Wednesdays. It took me a while to go on Sundays.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just, I was confused, I guess. Like, it kind of felt earth-shattering.
Yeah.
Like, you had been convinced of something your whole life, and then suddenly, like, the scales fall off your eyes, and you realize that it wasn't true at all.
The perspective I think of is, again, that happened, that the scales really fell off of the Apostle Paul's eyes. We know when he found the Lord, and literally it was just like, bam, like you said, but that was physical reality, but for you it was spiritual reality.
Yeah.
You had tried all these things, and it didn't seem like they were taking, or they were giving you what you needed overall.
Yeah, everything that I had tried was all about, like, giving something. And when I came to Christ, it was all about letting him take something. So it was a very different like, experience. So instead of, like, wanting something more for yourself, it's more like, I want something to be taken away. I want this to be taken away. I want to give this up to somebody. I don't want to receive anymore. You know?
Yeah. And that's exactly what Christ does, is he takes the weight that we've been carrying, or the good works we're trying to do, or whatever we're utilizing to try to find peace in our heart, you know?
Yeah.
And that big, huge hole we all have, and Christ really becomes what can fill that hole, and more completely than anything else. Did your family notice anything different? Did your mom, you have this close relationship, was it hard to tell her, hey, this is what happened?
So when I came home from youth that night, I immediately went to go tell my mom that I was like, hey, I gave my life to Christ. And she was like, you know what, funny enough, I've been, like, thinking about going to church.
Wow.
And so around the same time, my grandma had died. And so my mom had went to her house to kind of clean some stuff out. And that's when my mom kind of found, like, all of her Bibles and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah. So my mom started getting, like, really interested, because not only did she find, like, her Bibles, she found a lot of stuff that she was interested in, my mom. And so she was like, kind of like, how do I connect with my mom? And so she started diving in. But the problem is my grandma had a King James Version Bible. So my mom couldn't understand it.
Yeah, some these and thous.
Yes, some these and thous. And so the next time I went to church, I had brought home a Bible for my mom. And, oh, gosh, it almost, like, breaks my heart. I bring it home to her, and I was like, hey, like, my church gives out Bibles for free, so I just thought I would bring you one so you can understand it. And she breaks down. Whoa. She was, like, so happy. And I was like, it was a free Bible. Why are you crying? And she was just so, like, she was just so grateful. Yeah. But that, like, really embodies my mom. My mom was so grateful about everything, even if it was free. She was just really grateful. And I think it it really helped her to now kind of have a way to understand her mom and like what she believed in and stuff like that. So we actually started reading the Bible at the same time.
That's
Yeah.
cool. It's
So
really special.
Yeah, we really had our own two paths that like really interceded at the same time, which was crazy.
Yeah. I definitely think God planned for sure for you guys. And I just want to point out the Bible that you were able to receive. I mean, you, like you said, Mom, it's just a free Bible. But I'm so grateful that that's something that we do offer and give away for whomever.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful that we have individuals that invest in that opportunity, because you just don't understand the power of it until you don't have it and you get the chance to receive it. Yeah. And I just love that your mom was so grateful for the most important, thing that she could be holding on, and that is to the Word of God. Wow, that is so special and beautiful. So you're on this journey together and you're starting to learn more about God. Was that exciting? Was it scary? What was it like for you?
It was a little bit of both. I think it helped a lot to have my mom there with me, because pretty soon after that, she wanted to come to church. So we decided to start going on Sundays because I thought it was kind of weird to bring my mom to youth group.
Yeah. Maybe,
So we went for a couple of Sundays. I remember the dress that my mom wore the first time that we went to church. She looked beautiful. My mom always looked beautiful, but she looked beautiful. And we sat in the back because we didn't really know anybody. And we just cried during worship, and we just sat there the whole time. It was really nice. It was just nice to have somebody there, especially somebody like my mom, Yeah. And to feel like I was finally on the right track, and on the right track with somebody.
Yeah, especially your mom. I mean, that person in your life, like you said, that you looked up to probably the most, influenced you the most. I wonder what was happening inside of her. She's watching her daughter receive this amazing gift of salvation and then grow in her relationship with God. Did you see changes in your behaviors and your own thinking process? I know before you walked into that youth group and nailed that piece of paper to the cross, you were dealing with some pretty heavy things: depression, suicidal ideation. How did that impact you the longer you were on that journey of knowing Jesus?
Yeah, so I would say like before that night, I would think about ending my life every single day. And it was like overbearing. And it wasn't even like, sometimes there wasn't anything that provoked it or anything that made me want to feel that way. It was just always there. And I didn't feel safe with myself ever. And then that night, I nailed it down, and it didn't have the same power over me. It wasn't something scary. It was something that I kind of like, if that thought came up, I would kind of roll my eyes at it. I was like, yeah, whatever. Where like I still had those thoughts, but I knew how to handle it. I knew that it wasn't going to take over me, and that it wasn't something I had to be afraid of, and that I could let it pass.
That's powerful. And I think probably somebody listening even today can embrace that as well. And I think that comes when we surrender. Yeah. Nothing's perfect, right? Yeah. But it changes our countenance and can help us overcome, which I think is such a beautiful part of your story in overcoming. You guys are living in Mesa at that point, right?
Yeah, I'm split between my mom and my dad, so I'm going back and forth between my mom's house in Mesa and my dad's house, who at the time we had now moved in with my stepmom, but we're still in Phoenix.
Okay.
So
did he see some of this happen to you? Were you able to share with your dad at all what God had been doing?
No. Yeah. My dad's very closed off to all of this still. I think especially now, he's very closed off to it. So when I started going to church, the weeks that I was with my dad, I wouldn't go to church at first. I was like, that's too scary to even think about asking him about, and all of that. And after a while, my mom kind of convinced me to start going when I was at his house. And so I did, and he was kind of like, okay, I mean, I guess.
So you would just drive yourself to church then?
No, my dad would have to take me.
Your dad would take you, so he would come drop you off.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. My parents were always kind of like the ones who were like, we want our kids to be able to choose where they go and like what, if they want to follow a religion or anything like that, like they should be able to choose. So it wasn't like he was thinking like, oh, like she can't do this or like she can't go. But it was definitely like a big question mark. It was like, why is she doing this? And like, it was very out of the blue, I would say, for him.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great encouragement to other students who might be in the same place or individuals where maybe a parent doesn't believe and you were just yourself. I really would like to go. And I love the fact that he was willing to take you. That says a lot about him, but that says a lot about your demeanor and not being, it was scary, but you took the choice. You took the step. Yeah. You made the choice, which is huge as well. And I'm sure your life is still making an impact on him as he watches it unfold with all that you've been through. So you're living then at home with your mom, and she's married to your stepdad?
Yes.
And that seemed to be going okay?
It was going great. My stepdad was great to me. He was always kind. He was like, I mean, he was literally like my dad, you know, when I wasn't with my dad. He showed up for every single school event. He was always there. He knew all my friends. They really liked him. He was hilarious. And just like, I would spend hours talking to him. We would talk about everything. Yeah. And he just knew so much. And he was just like a field of knowledge that, and sometimes like I had no idea about something and we could talk about it for hours. And it was just so cool, like to pick at his brain a little bit. And
your mom and him, they had, you think, had a pretty good relationship at that point?
Yeah.
How long had they been married at that point?
Gosh, they probably got married when I was 7 or 8.
Okay.
So a decently long time, at least. Sure. It was 8 years at that point, at least. Yeah, 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah, but then they'd been together for 10 or 11 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically my whole life. Yeah.
So this was besides your dad, obviously, this was the other male influence in your life, was your stepdad. I mean, this is who you knew, who you trusted.
Yes.
And who your mom trusted. So then let's move a little farther forward, because this is where your story just gets, it's just like, it's a turn that you couldn't have seen ever. Yeah. Your mom's growing in her faith, obviously, and you're growing in your faith. And I know there were some baptisms that we do every probably 2 or 3 months. And at that point in time in our church history, we were doing them as often as we could. And I know it was a pretty exciting time for you because you and your mom were going to get baptized together.
Yes.
What was that like? When that decision came?
So I had heard about baptisms coming up, and I was like, you know what? I've never been baptized. I want to do it. There's just something telling me, just do it. Just do it. And so I told my mom, I remember we were in the car, and I told her, I was like, hey, there's baptisms coming up at church. I'm going to do it. And she goes, hey, can you sign me up? And I was like,
way.
What? Like, I didn't even ask her. She asked me. And so it was just such an encouragement. I was like to not only be supported, but to have somebody there to like hold my hand the whole time and like know that this is scary, but it's so exciting. And to have it be like my mom too, like just to have her there is so awesome. And I think in the moment I took that for granted and I was like, yeah, my mom's just doing my mom thing, you know?
Yeah.
But when I think back on it, I was like, that's so cool. It was just so cool.
Yeah, I want to say what a unique decision and a beautiful decision to say, hey, my daughter's making this decision. I'm going to make it too.
Yeah.
I just think that's awesome. And that must have been really exciting for you to have that comfort of knowing my mom is growing as well. And she wants to make this big decision too.
Yeah. So my mom was really diving deep too. And that was like the really interesting thing because at this point my mom was working from home. And so her and my stepdad would do Bible study almost every single day. every single day with somebody in our neighborhood. I guess somebody in our neighborhood was doing a Bible study. Somehow they connected, and it was for hours every single day. They were just diving into the Bible. And so my mom was really like, once I think she found out that I was on the same path, it just set her off, and she just wanted more and more and more.
Kind of makes sense. I think a lot of people that search and maybe utilize other religions or New Ageism or even atheism. I mean, they're trying to find something, but it's just like never enough.
Yeah.
And when they get the chance to grow and find a relationship with Christ, I think that's where we see this incredible, I call it speed growth.
Yeah.
Because for so long they've been trying to grow, but again, those things don't, they don't have life to them. And the opportunity to know Christ, that's resurrection life.
Yeah.
So that growth does snowball. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Know that was something that was a part of her life and your stepdad's life. What was the morning you got baptized like?
So this is also like where I kind of see God's hand in all of this too. So when we were getting baptized, I was just finishing up my junior year. And so I'm still 1 week on, 1 week off with my mom.
Okay.
And my dad had gone on a cruise with my stepmom. It was like kind of random. They wanted me to go. I didn't go, but they went on this cruise right when school was ending. So it kind of got our schedules a little mixed up. And so the week I was supposed to get baptized, I was actually supposed to go back to my dad's house, but I had decided not to. And I don't really know why. But that would mean that the Sunday that I got baptized, if I was with my dad that week, then I would go back to my mom's house and I would have stayed there that night. So I had decided not to go to my dad's and instead stay at my mom's for that week, meaning that Sunday I would go to my dad's after my baptism. So that morning, it was great. We woke up early. It was pretty usual for us. Yeah. And we were both really nervous. I think my mom was nervous too because my mom was very heavily tattooed. I don't know if you remember, but
I saw a little bit. But.
So I think it was like an extra bit of nerves for her because it was like my mom kind of she was very used to always having to cover up her tattoos when she was in a professional setting. So I think it was like an extra layer of hard for her because it was like not only was like her story getting exposed, but like this is who she is. And it's something very new for her. But she was in
church. There's probably a mindset of I won't be accepted or I'll be judged for that. Maybe I don't know if that's how she was feeling, but I could imagine.
And I remember just sitting in the little Start Here room with her. And I was a little grumpy that morning. I won't lie. Yeah. I don't know what was going on, but my mom was in the best mood. She was in the best mood ever. And she was just smiling the whole time. And it was just great. It was a little hard for her because she didn't know who was baptizing her. When like I knew like Skylar was baptizing me and like obviously I knew Skylar. But Trish baptized my mom, which was super cool. And we were just so excited. Just so excited.
I remember your mom getting baptized and just, again, watching the opportunity. And she was just, like you said, there was such joy in her heart. It was like another layer of peace and confirmation that she was right where she needed to be.
Yeah.
And you could see that. You could see it in her tears. You could see it in her countenance. And then letting go, which is the beautiful part of baptism. We're letting go of what was and embracing what God is. And it's almost like in the water, it's just like it just washes over us. What we were, maybe what we've tried, maybe the shame, guilt, whatever. And then when we come up, it's a split second, but I believe supernaturally in that split second, something happens in our hearts. And there was something very special that was going on inside your mom's heart.
Yeah.
So Sunday morning happens, and you wind up then eventually going over to your dad's.
So for the baptism, my grandparents on my stepdad's side came. My stepdad came.
Yeah.
My boyfriend came, and my friends came.
You need like a whole section.
Yeah, we filled up almost a whole row. I was like, that's so cool.
That is cool.
Did not tell my dad I was getting baptized. So that was not, he didn't even know. So afterwards, we went out to brunch. And then I went back home to get ready, change, because I was still like, you know.
Yeah.
And
Post-baptism look.
yeah, my boyfriend at the time, we were supposed to go out with some friends that night to get dinner. So I got ready and he was going to take me to my dad's house. So we go out for dinner that night and I get home probably around like 9 or 10.
To your dad's?
Yeah.
He drops you off there.
Yeah, and I remember falling asleep around like 11:30. I just felt really good. Like I felt like, yeah, I got baptized. Like everything's going to be so good now.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but I feel like I got humbled really fast.
Life can make a big turn, especially when you have a peace in your heart. You know, you had a beautiful peace. You and your mom had experienced this event together. And then everything changed. Tell me a little bit about that change. Like, what did you wake up to, Kaida, and what had happened?
I woke up around 6 that morning to a text from my stepbrother asking me if I was okay. And that was really strange because he doesn't ever text me.
And at this point, you don't know anything.
I don't know anything. I had just woken up and so I texted him back. I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm at my dad's house. Like, what's going on? And it worried me a little bit. So I texted my mom and I remember texting her, like, are you okay? Like, is everything okay at home? And I'm just laying in my bed waiting for a text back. And I'm on Instagram. Like, I'm on my phone.
Yeah.
And it's like 6:30 now. And my dad opens my door and he says nothing.
Wow.
He opens my door and he just like lays on my bed with me. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you being a weirdo?
Yeah.
And he is just like sobbing. Oh, man. And there's very few times that you see your dad cry.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what is going on? And like, he can't even like get it out. He was just saying words. And he was, my stepdad's name was David. And he was just like, your mom got shot and David was there and your brother was there. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, what are you saying? And
right.
He just says that David shot your mom and your brother was there. And I was like, why? Like, what happened? And at this point, I'm thinking like, maybe it was an accident or maybe somebody broke in or something. And I was like, why? And my dad was like, he said that God made him do it. And a lot of times, like, people talk about like the moment that they come to Christ and like what it feels like. And I don't remember that feeling, but I remember that moment and I remember turning my back on God and what that felt like. And it was a very familiar feeling because I had lived without God for so long. And so in that instant, when I turned my back, I felt it. And I didn't even know that we had a gun.
So it's just anything that you had like ever thought, well, this could happen or not. You didn't even know there was a gun in the house.
I didn't know there was a gun in the house. Wow. Like my world like shattered.
Oh, yeah.
I had like not even in my wildest dreams would I imagine that this would happen. Like it wasn't even like, there was never even a thought in my mind that my stepdad would even hurt my mom.
Right. This is a guy you've lived with. You're as long as you said, as long as I can remember. And now you're getting this kind of news.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how shocking that would be. So did you want to go to the house immediately?
I asked him, I was like, is my mom okay? And he just sobs even more, and I just knew. I didn't know at that point the details and really how, I don't want to say idiotic, but idiotic my question was. Yeah.
So how does you were 17 probably then?
I was 16.
16. How does a 16-year-old process this kind of tragedy?
Well, funny enough, I texted Skylar and I was like, hey, I need prayer. And that was it. And he calls me later that day and he goes, hey, what's going on? Like, how are you doing? How's life?
in Skylar way. I love that
Yeah.
guy. He's our youth pastor.
Yeah. And I felt so bad, but I had to like tell him what had just happened. And the first thing he says to me is he's like, I want to make sure that you know this, but God did not ask him to do that.
Wow.
And that kind of, I turned back. And I think I needed somebody to tell me that. It was like,
sure,
this was not God. He can say whatever, he can blame it on whatever, but it wasn't God. And I can't feed into that lie.
Wow.
So Skylar really set me straight.
Oh, it's so good that he declared that for you.
Yeah.
That's a gift. And I know that God put Skylar in your life from beginning to where we're at now, but for that moment in time, because you needed to hear that.
Yeah.
Wow. So what are some of the details of, if it's okay that I ask,
of course,
of what happened that Sunday night? What have you found out on your journey since then?
So when I left, everything was really good. I remember saying I love you. I remember saying bye. They were both very happy. My brother, he was at work. So my brother didn't come to my baptism. He was at work. And he got off later that night. And I guess my mom, she was really sweet of her, but no matter how late we got out of work, my mom would always make dinner for us. So there were times where I would get off at midnight and my mom was cooking me dinner at 1 a.m.
Wow. That's awesome.
So my mom was making dinner for my brother, and there was obviously something going on, and my brother was asking her about it, and she was saying that David was really scaring her, and they had kind of been getting into like an argument, which is pretty rare. I had never heard them. It was very rare if I heard them argue, and it never really escalated into anything. I had never heard them yell at each other. They were very passive people. Like it was very peaceful in my house between them. So she said that everything was okay and that she was just worried. So my brother goes to bed. And at this point, it's about the same time that I went to bed, around 11. And the way that my house was shaped, it was shaped in almost a circle. So my room and my mom's room actually have a door that connect. So if I was staying there that night, we actually would have shared a wall and a door. But my brother's room was next door. So to get to my mom's room, he would either have to go through my room or go all the way around through the mud room. And my brother didn't go through my room, thankfully. He went through the mud room, and he heard them arguing again. And my mom, she must have yelled or something, and my brother's coming through. I don't know how much my brother saw, but he heard the first gunshot, and he ran. He grabbed his keys. He ran barefoot. I remember he messed up his toe because he was running on rock, and he just ran. While he was leaving, he said he heard 10 more shots. And he just left and called the police first, and then he called my dad. And when he called my dad first thought that my brother was like high and was like just like messing with him.
Yeah.
He thought that he was like joking. Not to say that that's something that my brother would joke about, but more that this was so obscure.
Yeah. So out of the
ordinary, that my dad didn't believe it at first.
Right.
So my dad calls my mom about 15 times. And he knows that if he calls my mom while he has me at home, my mom will pick up. And she doesn't answer. So my dad drives all the way out to Mesa. Luckily, my brother's girlfriend lived pretty close. So he drives to her house and he stays there. The cops get called. The cops come to my mom's house. And from what I know from like the police report, when they come out, my stepdad comes out and blood on his sweater and on his hands. And they ask him if anyone else is in the house. And all he says is, she's dead in the bedroom. I killed her. She's dead in the bedroom. He admits to it right there.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
For a 16-year-old, for your brother who was on scene. I can't imagine. That must have been a tough week.
Yeah. It got tougher. That same week, they had cleaned the house. Forensics had cleaned the house, and we were kind of just like trying to get through the week. And my brother he's really close with our neighbor because they both work on trucks together. So my neighbor calls my brother, who at this time is still staying at his girlfriend's house, so he's really close, and he goes, "Hey, somebody's trying to get into your house. Like, I don't know if you invited somebody over here to try and get in, but it looks like somebody's trying to break into your house."
At this point, the house had been probably scrubbed down by forensics, so still in probably a certain state. It had been cleaned?
It had been cleaned.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's nothing to really mess with in there.
Okay.
So my brother gets there, and my uncle on my stepdad's side was there. And he lives really close to my mom's house, and he was trying to get the spare key to get into the house. So my brother's a hothead, and he's like, "Hey, like, what the F are you doing? Like, what are you doing?" And they end up getting into like a bit of a spat, and he ends up leaving, thankfully. My brother's still there, calls my dad like hysterically, and he's like, "Hey, like, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what's going on, but they're trying to get into the house." So my dad goes, and that's when they have to board up the house, change the locks, and to like my mom just died, and like we have to board up the house. Like it was heartbreaking by people that I consider family, you know, like these are people that I would spend every holiday with. I would see all the time, but not only that, like these were people that my mom deeply cared for.
Yeah.
And I think that's the more important part is like my mom had such a heart for my stepdad's side of the family. She didn't have a big family, so she really dove into his family, especially because they're so close. We were there all the time. So I texted my grandma, and I was like, "Hey, like, this is not cool.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
What's going on?"
Yeah. And she had told me that the reason that they were trying to get in was to clean the house. And so, like, right off the bat, I knew she was lying. So my dad and my brother searched the house to see what they maybe were trying to get. My brother dug around through the house a little bit, and we have a safe in my parents' bedroom, and it's also, so like, my parents' bedroom had their bathroom and a closet, and it was like a pretty big like sliding door closet, and in there was the safe. And in that safe was prescription pills. And so my mom had some dental work that was done a while ago. And so she had prescription pain pills. But my mom was one to never take anything. So we kind of figured that my stepdad was taking these. And along with that, we also found mushrooms. So it was like everything that I kind of knew about my parents kind of fell apart.
On top of everything else that's going on.
Yeah. Like to not even know that my parents had guns in the house, but then to know that my stepfather was probably doing drugs. Everything kind of like shattered, and I didn't know who I was living with for my whole life. And I think that's kind of like when I started to spiral. It really like left me questioning a lot, especially because of like a lot of the things that my stepdad had said that night, which I only found out about later, where he had talked about how God was telling him that he wasn't a part of our family and weird things like that. And so when I had told my family that I felt guilty that I had left my brother there alone that night, they told me that I would probably be dead if I was there that night.
Yeah.
And I think knowing myself, I probably would be.
What a confirmation of God's hand on your life.
Yeah.
You know, when you said earlier, the schedule got mixed up and the crews got put in there, but it's just so interesting how I believe the hand of God can work. And I'm a big believer that, circumstance is circumstance, and supernaturally, the hand of God is a part of all things. And to know that that change saved your life. It doesn't answer all the questions that we have, like the whys. Why was your mom? Why did she have to be there? Why did your stepdad have to utilize substances to take him out of the mindset that he normally would have had a definitely probably more peaceful demeanor, but something was eating away to tell him to do something that is so violent, that was out of character, I'm guessing.
Yes.
I know it doesn't make everything easier to think, oh yeah, God had his hand on me, but what about them? And we'll never be able to answer those questions. But I'm very, very grateful that you weren't there. And I'm so grateful that your brother was able to escape. That he didn't use your room, that literally he used the mud room, and God made a way. What was the spiraling like for you then over the next few months? I'm just, Kaida, thinking most 16-year-olds are like trying to figure out what they're going to wear to the prom, what they got for homework. Our hearts were so heavy for you because you were carrying this weight that no 16-year-old should ever have to experience.
I remember the first few nights, my boyfriend at the time would come over to my house and I would have to have him talk to me so I could go to sleep. I couldn't have it be quiet when I go to sleep because my brain would start spiraling on it. And I remember my dreams would just be like bright, like red. And I would just envision what I thought happened a million times over because I really didn't know. I couldn't like break it down in my head how this would happen. And I was just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I was like just trying to put it all together. So I would just replay it over and over and over again. So I had to have somebody there to just tell me anything. It could have been nonsense, just so I could stop thinking about it for a minute and go to sleep.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful that it was during summer break. If it was during school, I don't know what I would have done. So I kind of had at least 2 months to get to a place where I was okay leaving the house 5 days a week.
Yeah.
But I was just terrified. I was terrified everywhere. Didn't matter where I was just scared. I was scared, even though I knew David had been arrested, I was scared that somehow he would find me. I was scared for a very short period of time of all the men in my family.
Yeah.
That if something so sudden could happen, then it could happen again. And that I wasn't safe even with people that I trusted, because I trusted someone so much and I wasn't safe with him. So I had no safety. I had no peace. I was like in constant shock. And I had to remind myself constantly that this was actually happening. And I still do.
Yeah.
There's some days where I wake up and I'm like, this actually happened. Like, you weren't imagining it. Like, it is real, and you really do have to face it head on.
So where are you at with God in all of this? In those months, I mean, you and your mom had such a beautiful opportunity to find Jesus. And then suddenly, like, you're probably wondering, where are you, Jesus, in that capacity? But like, what was that like?
I was really confused. I was really mad at God.
Yeah.
For a very long time. I was really mad. And I didn't understand, because I felt like I was finally doing everything right.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, like, my whole world is just like flipped. So I guess, like, I didn't understand the character of God enough to really know, like, how to still love God through it. So I would go to church still, but I really wasn't sure, like, if I was doing the right thing still. And I wasn't sure if God was real. And I just didn't understand. I didn't understand how I could finally, like, accept God, and then everything would just be completely destroyed. Yeah.
So where did the change come? I just remember we were so concerned. So many people wanted to help. Instead of you baking for everybody else, we were trying to bake for you. But we just felt that heaviness and prayed a lot. People would maybe meet you, like I'm sitting across from you right now, and I would have no idea that you've been through what you've been through. As we said at the opening of this great conversation we're having, it's just miraculous. So where was there a turn where something internally started to reach back out to God?
I just kept showing up to church.
Yeah.
And it took me a while, but I had to face the fact that God wasn't the one holding the gun that night. And so there was, even though I've gone through my journey of forgiveness, there was someone to blame for those actions, and it wasn't God. God was not puppet mastering this whole situation, and God wasn't trying to punish me for my past sins. And I had to start to understand who God is, and that bad things can happen to Christians, and really kind of just like face some of these stereotypes that I think a lot of people have about Christians.
Yeah.
How they walk on a little rainbow and stuff like that.
Unicorns and rainbows, right?
Yeah. And I had to listen to a lot of testimonies. I did.
I know that's, for me, one of my favorite things is to come on Tuesday nights to celebrate recovery and hear the stories. Because again, your story today is impacting a listener, and then somebody else's story impacted us. So a testimony matters. Because if somebody else could get through their pain and their shame or their pain, grief, we can move through ours as well. The hand of God can be with us. What was recovery like for you in the aftermath of such a shattering, tragic moment, so much grief? You're still under 18, so there's hormones in life and you're growing up. You're trying to figure out who you are. What was that process like?
Well, I didn't actually start CR until the January after.
Okay.
So I had 6 months where I was kind of just like, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Like, I need something else. Like, I'm going to church, that's great, but I need something else. And so I had heard about CR, and actually you guys were about to launch CR, and you were promoting it when me and my mom were going to church together. And her and I had actually talked about going together, and sadly she passed before CR launched. But it just kept getting brought up at church, and I did hear from a couple people that it was only for drug addicts and alcoholics. And I was like, man, maybe it's not the place for me.
Yeah.
I was like, why don't I just ask somebody?
Yeah.
Why don't I just ask somebody?
Far from the truth, right?
So I asked Skylar, I was like, hey, like, do you think it's a good idea if I go to CR? Like, is that like a good fit for me? And he was like, yeah. Which it's it's not backhanded, but it can sound backhanded. Yeah. But he was like, let me make sure it's okay because you're 17 still. So I was already like, oh my gosh, am I not supposed to go? I'm too young to go. But it ended up working out really well. And I remember I came the first time that they had it in 2024. So the first one of the year. And I remember just going, and it just surpassed my expectations and like what I thought it was going to be. And I cried a lot the first couple of times I went, but I just kept going. There was just something there that was eating away at whatever was left. I just kept coming back.
And that's something they say often is just keep coming back, right?
Yes.
But I think that's a key to working through pain and suffering and sorrow is keep getting up, keep moving forward, even if it's an inch. Not staying down as much as you can. And again, for CR, keep coming back. And that's one thing that I was just, again, blown away, but not surprised because during the space in between your grief and losing your mom and CR starting, you still showed up, and broken, you still showed up. And I think that has a lot to say about your character. That has a lot to say about your mom's character in leading you to be that kind of a person. Because obviously that's helped you become who you are, as I sit across from you now. In CR, if you don't know what CR is, it's a 12-step recovery program for hurts, habits, and hangups. And it ain't just for a specific person, because we all got stuff. Some of it is the life pain of just things that go wrong, like you said. Every human being is vulnerable to them, or it can be an issue that you already know of that you're dealing with. It could be a bad habit or a specific addiction. But what I love about it, it's an open space to deal with it, to face it head on, like you said, and then to be able to start to work through not just rehashing the drama every week of it, but to start going, how do I move through this? And how do I move past it? And I know that you recently just finished a step study. What is a step study, and how has that helped your healing process?
So a step study is basically the 8 principles and the 12 steps, but you dive in real deep. So it's everything that you kind of go through at a normal CR night, but really deep. So you'll have 4 books and a journal and a bunch of questions, and you'll basically take the time to actually work through the steps and principles. And it looks like a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's you completely gut yourself and you open it up to all the women that are there or all the men, if you're a man, that are there. And you share all the hard things and even some of the easy things too, but you gut it all out. You give it to God and you really just like clear yourself out.
Wow. Obviously, I mean, just looking at you, God has helped you in that journey of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But wasn't that painful?
Yeah. 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 And I was
triggering, like you got to walk through all these things again.
Mm-hmm.
And this is so fresh.
I was walking through my testimony and going through the things that I needed help on while doing the step study. So it was very interesting, but yeah.
Well, it's obviously something that I believe works. It's supernatural and it's also very practical because I think to work through any issue in life, you got to face it head on and take it step by step and bite by bite. And like you said, surrender it all and allow God to clean out all the stuff that can easily start to rest and sit. And if you don't deal with it, it's just years and layers. And we talk about that at CR. It's like an onion and you just got to peel away the process. So where does that put you today? How long are you out of the date of mom's passing? Like how far away has it been?
It's been about 1.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so still a little fresh.
Still so fresh.
Yeah. I have been working on my journey of forgiveness. Yeah. And I think that's definitely the most impactful and important thing that happened during my step study. Is that's what I really went for, was to like tackle this and like, how do I forgive? Like, how do I get over this mountain, right?
Yeah.
How do I jump this hurdle? So I got to like dig deep into what happened and how it made me feel, but also all the things that I did and all the forgiveness that I got. And because of all that forgiveness, I can gracefully and graciously forgive no matter what. But also knowing that what David did doesn't come with no consequence.
Yeah.
Not only here, but also in his day of judgment.
Yeah.
And I do not get to play God.
Yeah.
And because of that, I don't get to hold that resentment. Because if I hold that resentment, that's me playing God. That's me saying, well, this is the punishment I would give if I was God, and I'm not God. And so I really had to let go of that and really decide that God was more important than what I thought that he deserved.
Whoa. And that only comes through maturing, that kind of perspective. I just want to encourage you in that. I see that maturity, and I'm so thankful for it because I believe God's going to use that in your life, in your future, and for others as well. I know you recently had the opportunity. Did you do any sort of a statement in court?
I did.
And what was that like? What did you say?
So in my head, although I hope it's not, that might have been the last opportunity that I ever have to say anything to David. So I really had to think about what I want him to sit with for the rest of his life. Because if I never get to speak to him again, that's all he's going to get. And so I really had to dive deep into forgiveness. And luckily, we were actually going through like the step of forgiveness in our step study at the same
God
time.
ordaining that process too.
And what that looked like. And so I got to talk about all of the good that I had growing up and really just how much I missed it and how amazing a person my mom was and how shocking this is, but how I don't wish anything bad to happen to him. and I don't wish anything bad to happen to that side of my family. If anything, I wish I could see them again. And I wish I could talk to my stepdad again. And I think that was like kind of the big thing, even though I didn't directly say that I forgive you, that's what I meant.
Well, that in itself, Kaida, says so much about you and about your journey and about your continuing process of allowing God in. I kind of want to end with this question, and then I want to encourage you. I just think your courage to be here today is amazing. But if we could change how we're sitting and across from you, you had a couple minutes with your mom, what would you say to her?
I think firstly I would ask her if she knew if this was going to happen. I think the more I've looked into it, it seems like she did know and had some expectation. I think there's a part of me that still feels guilty, and I probably would ask her if I could have done something to help her. I think, though, the first thing that I would blurt out is, are you proud of me? Am I doing good? Am I doing what you want? Am I on track? And like, I think more than that, I would want her to know that I still need her and that I still love her. Because I really, as funny as it sounds, I don't know how to be a woman. And that's kind of that hole that your mom fills, is she guides you through that. And I still need her for a lot of things. But even though she's not here, I'm not mad at her for it. It's not her fault. But I love her and I miss her very much.
And I think if she were sitting here, I can't speak for your mom, but there's no doubt how proud of her, how proud she would be of you. She would be so proud of who you've become, who you're going to be, the dreams that you're reaching for. And I think she would probably, I just have this sense in her heart, she would be most proud of how you've pushed through the journey and not allowed the tragedy to derail God's plan for your life. Ultimately, I think that's why she wanted to partner with you that baptism morning for her life, as well to lead you to go, Kaida, the most important thing we're doing is surrendering our lives to God. And I think God gave you that beautiful memory to remind you of that. And she's right here in your heart to push you on and say, stay on, keep going. I'm proud of you, Kaida. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
You're a courageous woman, and we are very blessed in our community to have somebody so young and so courageous and so faith-filled. And God takes all the ugly of our lives and builds something beautiful, and he's building something beautiful in you. And it might be a coffee shop someday where the lost and the broken can come in and they get a little bit of your dad's coffee and they get one of those amazing rosemary chocolate cookies. And for a few moments, they get a piece that you're so desperate to want people to experience what you have because you understand how hard life can be. And I just know God's got a great plan and a hope and a future for you.
Thank you.
So thank you for pushing through, moving forward, and at the same time being so real, so real. We love you and we believe in you. And if you're interested in coming to 2911, I want to encourage you to be a part of our community. We meet on weekends. You can find us online, but our church is full of amazing individuals like Kaida who have a story, and that story matters. And we would love to have the opportunity to hear yours. So find us online at 2911church.com I'm so glad you were able to be with us in our one-on-one. Kaida, thank you so much for your honesty, for your vulnerability. So thank you. God bless.
God bless.
We love you.